Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight. Alright, daylight burners, you're in for a treat. I'd meant to have this up Friday morning, and due to some technical difficulties, I'm sure you're tired of hearing about those, but they're a real thing, and they happen. But I recorded a 50-minute interview with my good friend Billy Whitfield, and then the whole thing ended up not recording, which is just super awesome. So anyway, that's why me and Robbie kind of did the impromptu podcast last night, and which we needed to do anyhow. But the point being was that it was not our intention to do that. And anyway, we got all the kinks ironed out today, and Billy was able to do some recording with me and tell some stories, and I really think you're gonna like this one. Him and my dad have been good friends for a long time, and probably I know longer than I've been alive. And Billy is just a neat character. He is probably the most talented musician that you have never heard of in your life, and I don't say that with any sort of exaggeration. The guy is really, really gifted musically. He is so good at whatever he tries to do musically, and his wife is very, very good as well. And my dad has learned to play guitar with him, just play rhythm guitar. And so they've made a very good team because they're both kind of professional bullshitters. And they've known each other so long, they know everybody's mannerisms and what they're going to say next. And they've really got their act into a well-oiled machine. And Billy just turned 80 this year. I missed his birthday ride. He'll be 81 in January. And he has seen and done just about everything. And he has a very humorous way of explaining everything that he has seen in his life. And so long story short, he is the quintessential old cowboy that everybody likes to sit around and listen to and tell stories. And if you liked Waddy Mitchell, you're really going to like Billy Whitfield. Waddy was great. Not trying to take anything away from him. He was awesome. I just happen to know Billy a lot more. And so I was a lot more comfortable during this interview. And I also knew where the story was going. And he knows me well enough that it just really played off really well. He was able to let me tell a story while he sat back and added his insight. And then, of course, most of it was just him telling his stories, which is the way it should be, because I don't know a whole lot. And I really think you're going to like it. And between him and my dad, we're going to have plenty of material for you guys in the near future. Now that we got this recording, phone calls ironed out, it's going to be a lot easier. And I can do it while I'm on horse, so you get kind of the same feel that you're used to with me talking, but instead you're talking to somebody who's usually a lot more interesting than myself. So anyways, not to delay it anymore, here is Mr. Billy Whitfield, and I hope you guys enjoy it. We're live now, and I'm here with Mr. Billy Whitfield, old cowboy from way back, and a guitar playing extraordinaire, an all-around good friend of my family, and just a close friend of mine, Mr. Billy Whitfield.
Well, hello, Matt. How's everything going today?
You know, it's going pretty decent. I kind of had the day off, and I've just been kind of lounging around. Well, not really lounging around. I've been working on this show, trying to figure a few things out, and then it was lunchtime, so I ran into town to get lunch, and now here we are.
Oh, good. Well, say, I've been wondering about those kids. How old are those kids now?
Well, Sophia is 4.5, and Gus is 2.5.
I bet they're a handful now.
Oh man, Sophia is about as wild as they come, and Gus is pretty ornery.
he's not quite as wild as Sophia, but I think he's a little more ornery.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see him. Well, anyway, I just wondered what all's happening and what we're going to be going through here this time.
Well, I don't have really anything on the schedule too much. We're this show I kind of talk a little bit about everything. I try to make it mostly centered towards the cowboy way of life, just kind of what we do and what we use and why we do stuff. And then, you know, there's a lot of humor and comedy involved, and then I talk a little politics every now and then. I try not to go too in depth so I don't scare anybody off, and but I kind of talk about whatever comes to mind, and with you having the life experiences that you had, Billy, I knew that people would want to hear from you because you've been in the music scene a little bit. You've been a cowboy, and you've kind of been around a little bit. You've traveled the world a little bit in the military, so you've kind of seen and done it all, and you got some good stories about it. So that's all. That's the reason I've got you on.
Well, I'll tell you, Matt, I would start by telling you that I was born on a ranch, about 45 miles east of Canadian Texas, down in the very west edge of Oklahoma. And, anyway, that's where I started life, and, hung around there for a while till my dad did, until I finally, wound up in the Texas Panhandle. But anyway, when I was a kid, I learned right away how to ride. Actually, I always have to tell the story about my first ride. I don't remember it, but they put me on a horse and I fell off, and I've got the 2 scars on my head where I hit the edge of a sharp rock. And so anyway, that's evidence that I did fall off. But the good thing is I don't remember it. And then but, you know, and horsemanship was one thing I always kind of enjoyed. And then when I was about 16, well, that's when I was only 15, but I was about 16 when I really started in my cowboy life. We worked on a ranch up there that had a bunch of Hereford cows. And anyway, back in those days, they had screw worms. And you had to dehorn, you know, the yearlings had to be dehorned, and they would get those, put it plain, there was this maggots that get in there where the horns had been cut off, and we'd have to clean those out and doctor them. My brother was a healer, and I always roped the head, and I like to tell the story that if I missed the head, I've seen him catch them both hind feet. I mean, at a run across a grass pasture. But
well, that is a pretty good feat to heal an animal at full speed without anything on his head. That's a pretty good feat. You got to be a pretty dang good roper to do that.
You know, he was, and but anyway, of course he lived with a rope in his hand, and anyway, he taught me you know, how to do some of those ropes. He was 5 years older than me, and so anyway, he was a pretty good teacher. But we had the best mentor that anybody could ever have, and he was one of the foremost cowboys of the latter times here. But anyway, what we generally did, though, Matt, we had several ranches spread around out in the Texas Panhandle, and even up into New Mexico, and we would gather the calves off of those ranches and bring them down to our home there in Sunray, and we'd run them. Then we'd wean them, you know, in the weaning trap. Then we'd usually put them on wheat. Now, back in those days, I know there were not very many feedlots, and so sometimes they could be sold off of wheat, and most likely not. In fact, some of them we sold just right off after we weaned them. But most likely we'd keep them on wheat, and then there were times when we'd keep them on over, run them on grass, and feed them some meal and grain. Of course, we limited their intake with salt, but we had some pretty good times, and of course, a lot of cattle doctoring, and I learned one thing, you know, it's to be a horseman, and it's another thing to be a stockman or a cattleman, and you have to merge those two together some way to be successful if you're going to be a cowboy. That's what I think. Of course, I suppose there's cowboys that don't ever work around cattle. They just work rodeos or whatever. I don't want to get into that part, but I did learn that, you know, there is a little bit of a difference in being a stockman and a horseman.
Well, that's true, and a big part of the job is reading cattle, and you've got to be I guess proactive would be a good word for it. You got to try to think ahead of those cattle, and you can, you know, there's always different little tells. One will pick their head up, one will pick their tail up, or they'll kind of glance over their shoulder at you, and you've got to be able to either react as they're moving or think ahead, because if you're reacting to them, they've already got you beat, and it's kind of an art form figuring out how to do that.
You know, it is, and you're absolutely right about you know, you need to be trying to think ahead of them, and most likely you can do that because, you know, most humans are smarter than most critters, but anyway, you've got to think ahead, be a step ahead of them just a little bit. And one thing I learned through the years, the best asset a person could have, and I'm talking bad about myself now because I lack this, to be sure, and that is patience. Patience is, boy, that is the best thing you can have if you're going to be working around animals. I don't care what kind they are, but, you know, if you just take your time, usually everything will work its way out. But you try to get something to make something do something it don't want to, then there's liable to be a wreck there some way if you don't work it out just right. But
yeah,
right.
I think you're
a step ahead.
I think you're right, and slower is faster, and silence speaks volumes with cattle. I mean, if you can be quieter and not push them as much, and just kind of get them to move at their own speed, you know, it may take a little bit longer, but usually not. It goes a lot smoother. So therefore, even though you're moving slower, you don't have any big congestion. You don't have anything trying to cut back on you, and it just moves more efficiently. And even though you're moving at a slower pace, you get done faster because it just goes smoother.
Well, you know, I agree with that there. I got to tell you one thing that's on my mind here now that we're talking about that. And there comes a time if you're running the cow-calf deal where you got to separate the cows and the calves usually more than once.
Yeah.
You know, depend on how everybody's got their own deal. But anyway, this old guy, I watched him, we would pin the cows and the calves, and then we'd get them in smaller pens and let the cows out. And they're not going to go anywhere because their calves are right there. But the way we did that is he would get a gunny sack or a toe sack or whatever you call that. We used to get our cotton seed cake in, or sometimes he even used his jacket. And he'd get there and those cows would run by. But if you shake that, whatever you had in your hand in front of those calves, they'd turn back. And the cows just go right on out. Once in a while you'd lose a calf, but they'd run past you. But anyway, that's what I'm getting at is that's a good way to separate them. That's one way. And of course, there's 100 others, but that brings about the point that, I don't care if what the deal is. Your style or your technique may be different from somebody else, but the bottom line is the job is still the same. I don't care who's doing it or how they do it. The job, like separating cows and calves, the job's still the same.
Today's episode is brought to you by Don't Be a Gunsel, more affectionately known as the D-Bags. Mr. Josh Williams has partnered with us on this and has become our main sponsor of the show. And a little bit about Don't Be a Gunsel. This is just right from their description on their page. We are farm, ranch, and rodeo folks who are tired of posers, fakes, and wannabes. So we carved out our own brand with a simple message: don't be a gunsel. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram, Don't Be a Gunsel, and don'tbeagunsel.com. They've got some hats and some stickers, and then they always share some of the best memes I've seen, so go check them out. Buy some of their merch. If you do, use the promo code Burnin Daylight and get yourself 10% off. That's BURNINDAYLIGHT. Get yourself 10% off. Get yourself some cool shit. Help a brother out. And so thanks to Don't Be a Gunsel. Go check them out.
Yeah, that is 100% right, Billy. And I think my first episode on this little show I'm doing was called Cowboy versus Buckaroo, and it was highlighting the differences in cowboy. And you know, and there's a lot more that goes into just a cowboy or cowpuncher and a buckaroo, because there's a lot of hybrid type people in between, and myself being one of them. But those are the two main different styles. Is you kind of got your Texas, you know, and High Plains style cowpuncher, and then you got the Great Basin and California style buckaroo. And the big differences is a swell fork saddle on the cowpuncher side, with a slick fork being on the buckaroo side, and the cowpuncher's either going to dally on rubber or tie hard and fast, and then the buckaroo's gonna use a big long rope and dally on a slick horn, and there's a lot of other intricacies in between, but at the end of the day, we're still punching cows. So it's the same thing, just different method.
Yeah, well, you know, I'll tell you quite honestly, I was kind of taken back. I didn't realize how protected I was, or how shielded or whatever it was from you know, from other methods and their techniques. But I remember one time we went down to one of the camps where we had a bunch of cows. It was branding time, and boy, just about every cowboy there had a inner tube rubber off the inner tube, you know, wrapped around the saddle horn there and the neck of it. And I hated to be stupid. I said, Marshall, what in the world is that for? Oh, he said they're doing what they call dally, and when they rope, he said they just wrap it around that, and that rubber keeps the rope from slipping. And but I never did get into that dally deal. I don't know. I kind of got spooked off when I heard that right away. When I first learned about it, said, well, you know, if you see some people with one finger gone or something, that might be the reason. And I thought, well, I'll just keep tying on, because I don't know how to dally anyway. And I never did learn. In fact, my saddle that I ride's got rawhide around the edge of the horn, and then down around the neck, and then it goes down to the cantle there. I mean the swells. I mean, and anyway, that was one thing that you were talking about, that differences, and there's a lot of them that I sure don't know about. So I'm kind of limited on what I know about outside of what we did there at home.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of a hybrid anymore. When I moved out here to Nevada, everybody, like I said, they ride a slick fork saddle with a pair of bucking rolls, or squat hits as they call them, and everybody was packing just seemed to be about a half a mile of rope, and I grew up roping on rubber. I've tied hard a little bit, but I really burnt my left hand. I'm kind of an ambidextrous person, but I rope right-handed, and I was tied on one time and just tagging calves, and the guy I was working with, he hollered at me and said, hey, I got a big calf here. You mind healing him? I said, no problem. And so I went up and I scooped up my heels, and I went to go to the horn, and I had that horn knot on there, and next thing I know, my coils got awful tight and hot, and so I kicked my horse up into a lope, and got some slack in that. I was able to pull my hand out and then go ahead and got him laid out and stretched out. But we got that calf doctored or tagged, I guess, and we let him up, and I pulled the horn knot off. It was one of those little nylon deals, and I pulled that horn knot off, and I chucked it out in the middle of that pen, and I've never tied hard and fast ever again. I tie off when I step down, but I've never tied hard and fast after that, and I've still got a scar on the back of my left hand from it, and so that kind of cured me from tying hard.
Well, the fact of it is, I don't know. I guess you were going to go one way or the other, but you tried to do both ways. I never did try to dally. But anyway, there's a good story. I don't know if you've told about that old cow that you had that was when you started to calving out cows out here or whatever it was.
Oh man, number 415. You've heard about this old cow a couple times, and
I have.
So we bought a bunch of, I think it was about 1,500 head altogether. Cactus feeders did, anyways, and they initially they were down at Stratford, and then they shipped them up to Syracuse, and I was one of the main guys there when we started running this confined cow-calf operation. And these old cows, it was right in the middle or at the tail end of the bad drought here in the Great Plains, Texas Panhandle, West Texas, that area. And so people were selling off cows left and right, and so you could pick up some pretty good cows sometimes, but this was not the case. These were basically just cull cows.
Yeah.
And whether it was, bad bag or they were a sorry mother or, in the case of old 415, just meaner than hell. And she was a big, smoky-colored Charolais bald-faced cow with a nub of a horn on one side and then like a little Jersey, kind of a cute little horn that stuck up on the other side. And she didn't look to be all that scrappy until I went to tag her calf, and I necked him and got him stopped, and I stepped down to dig in my saddlebags, and I tied off a step down, and I get a tag out, and that old cow, I look up, and she's got her head cocked and kind of pawing the ground a little bit, and so I hollered at the guy that was helping me, and I said, hey, you want to get on your horse and whoop that cow off if you can? I think she might be a little hooky. And he said, okay, and he stepped on, and he started that way, and no sooner than he took about 2 or 3 strides in her direction, that old bitch came right back up the rope at me, and I had a half hitch around my horn, and I popped my rope loose, and I held onto the tail, and I just kind of left I was riding this big old dun gelding, pretty nice horse. And I just kind of said, sorry, buddy, you're on your own. And I hopped the fence over into the pen next to us. And an old guy that was helping me, he bailed over the fence, and he did the same thing with his horse. He said, kind of, you're on your own. And this old cow liked to kill this calf, trying to get to us. We still had him necked, and we were trying to drag him up and over the fence. We couldn't roll him underneath because there was a hog panel tied to it, and to keep those calves from squirting in and out between pens. And so we're hauling him up over this pipe fence, and she is hitting this fence at full speed. Got her nose all bloodied up, and just pretty much halfway demon possessed at this point. And we finally got him hauled back over the fence and tagged and banded and everything. It was a big, nice calf. And we dropped him back over the other side, and we managed to get a hold of a feed truck driver, and we had him come by and drop about 200 pounds of feed in the bunk just to just to get her off of us, because we still had horses in the other pen. And luckily we got mounted up as soon as, she headed towards the bunk, and we hopped over and ran over to our horses and just as we were stepping up in the saddle, here she come again, and luckily we were kind of able to whoop her off with a rope and get out the gate. And then we made it known throughout the yard of anybody that was working there and anybody that we hired after that point, do not go in the same pen with 415 on foot if there's a calf on the ground. If she didn't have a calf at her side, she was probably okay. But I wouldn't have even tried it then. And everybody knew that number, 415, afterwards.
Bet they did, man, alive. That would be something else. Well, anyway, another thing I was going to tell you, Matt, is, I mentioned, I had a good mentor. He owned all these cows, and actually I was just a hand there, but I got to tell this story about when we gathered up, one of our summer, in late summer there, we'd take the cows off the top there and put them down on the river so we could feed them and they'd be protected a little bit. Anyway, when we moved them down, we missed 4 cows and 4 calves. And a guy that was working for the oil company, he saw me one day and told me, he said, I saw those cattle up there. So I got up there with my horse to get them one day, and it's about 4.5 miles, 4 miles or so to the house. And so I had to go through a gate first into a pasture that I don't remember how many cows were in there, probably 200 or something like that. And I had to take those 4 calves and 4 cows through there without getting them mixed up. And so I just took them right down the fence and crowded them all the way down there. And when I got down there, there was that old man, and he opened the gate for me. And I was sure proud that he had come about, 40 miles to be there when I got there, and we had lunch together. But I was proud he saw me come through those cows, with some methods that I'd learned from him. Luckily the other cows was kind of headed to water, and some of them were around the windmill, and so I just kept those ones I was driving close to the fence. And that's just a little deal, but there's some others that didn't work out quite that good. And,
yeah, it seems like when you kind of gotta make up a plan on the fly, it usually goes pretty good, but every time you plan it out to the greatest detail, it goes to hell real quick for some reason.
Yeah, you're right on. But there's one thing that I did learn. Those old, of course we had for years just straight Hereford cows, and Hereford bulls, so. But anyway, during those times, those old cows, they learned, and they were pretty easy to handle. Of course, that's after they learned. Some of them we kept, the heifers back and had made mama cows out of them. Well, those, they'd been around horses and they knew what it was all about. And so it's easier to handle them than, I'll tell you, than it was when we went to those Solera and Limousine bulls. I hate those things. I guess I never did know enough about them. And anyway, I tell you, they can't go over under something, they'll go through it. I found that out.
They're terrible. I hate bulls with a fiery passion, but you got to have them. So it's one of those things.
Yeah, I had one old bull that we moved out one time, and his toes had kind of growed long. He was a Solera. His toes growed long, and so anyway, I thought about this. Now, this is a pretty good one, I think, because it worked out good. What happened is, I said, let's just leave that bull here and I'll come and get him. And we had to drive those other cows, down to the new pastures. And anyway, a guy said, how are you going to get that bull? And I said, I don't know yet. And I got to thinking what I did is I had to go horseback anyway. So what I do is I just load my horse in the trailer and go up there where that bull was, and I'd get upwind from him, and I'd shake a little bit of cake out on the ground. And then I'd just get in the pickup and watch him, and he'd go up there and eat it. And I'd just load my horse back up and drive off. And I did that several times. And one day I thought, well, I'm going to see if I can get him in that trailer. So I just put some in the trailer, and sure enough, he ate it. And I said, I'm going to get you the next time. So I put just a little bit in the trailer the next time, and then put some way up in the front. Believe it or not, that bull just jumped right in that trailer. And I shut the trailer, the middle gate, loaded my horse up, and I was so tickled to get him caught. And but anyway, that was one of the things that was good. But I've had times where they'd turn on me too. There's just lots of stuff. Like I say, patience is the best thing a guy can have.
Yeah, I think you're right. Did you ever meet my friend Clint Mundell from over at Walsh?
Some of them. I knew them. In fact, one of them guys, they sung at our wedding, Bill. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that would
Bill,
be Clint. Clint's uncle is old Bill Mundell. But so Clint is one of my best friends, and he called me one day and he said, "You're gonna laugh at me because I kind of pulled a farmer move, but I don't care." They had this bull that had broken his penis, I think, and and he was a pretty expensive bull. They run really nice registered Angus cows, and they got this new bull, and he was supposed to be a pretty high powered dude, and I think he would have been, but he broke his penis, and they were getting ready to load him up, take him to the sale at Syracuse, and Clint, I guess, had played hell getting him in. They ended up having to rope a front foot and kind of halfway lead him to the house, and got his horse just about played out, and he was in the corrals there at their house and just fighting mad, and Clint was feeling sorry for he couldn't get his good horse because he had already pretty well played him out the day before, and he felt too bad for his young horse to rope him and try to drag him into the trailer. He said, so I pulled a farmer move. He grabbed his skid loader with the pallet forks on it and just herded him up in the trailer with that New Holland skid steer. And I said, well, you can call it a farmer move if you want, but I thought that was a pretty good all-around stockmanship because you saved your horses and you probably ended up saving a lot of stress on that bull because he figured out pretty quick he wasn't going to win the fight against a skid steer and loaded up in the trailer with pretty well no incident.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought about doing that, but I never had the skid steer anyway, that'd be pretty cool. You just got that old bull between the forks, I guess.
Yeah, he said he tried to take him a couple times, and then he blasted his forehead off those, that kind of headache rack looking thing on the pallet forks a couple times, and decided that wasn't worth it, and he just shoved him on up there in the trailer, shut the gate, and off to Syracuse he went to be made into hamburger meat eventually.
Yeah, well, that'd be a pretty good strategy if you had the equipment. Well, and he saved his horse. That's what I like. I always like to take it kind of easy on those horses. They do a lot of good work for you if you know how to use them. And
oh yeah,
I've seen people just beat their horse around. I never did like that, but that's their deal, not mine. But I tell you, I've had a lot of good years down there on those old ranches. In fact, I drove a truck a lot. I don't know if you knew that or not. We had a semi, and I'd haul those weaning calves up home, from the different ranches. And anyway, I drove that old semi a lot of miles. Had lots of good times. And then, go ahead.
Well, as I say, hauling cows is kind of a thankless job, Usually, if you're the driver, somebody's pissed off at you for one reason or another, and there's not much stopping when you got a load of cows on. You gotta get to where you're going pretty quick, or at least get to somewhere where you can unload them and get them on water. But it's a pretty thankless job, I think.
Well, I don't think so myself. And nobody was mad at me. We just, I was one that was there, and we didn't have all that many people at home. they was out on the ranch, and so I'd go get not only did I haul the cows up, or the calves, weaning calves, I would haul cottonseed cake in 100-pound sacks down to the other ranches. Well, somebody's got to do it, and I was at home there, and I don't know. I never did take the idea that somebody was mad at me. I just figured that's part of the job.
Well, yeah, I guess I was referring to the guys that haul cows full time. Because I've dealt with more cow haulers than I care to recall, and there's good ones and there's bad ones, but the bad ones really stick out in your mind, so it almost makes you think that most of the cow haulers are not worth their salt. But I guess it's
go ahead.
I said I guess because of that, the cow haulers kind of get a bad name, because the ones that, when you do get bad ones, they're really bad, it seems like, and you kind of get a bad taste in your mouth. But, the more I'm around, I deal with kind of the same group of truckers nowadays. There's about 15 or 20 of them that I deal with, pretty regular, and they're all pretty good guys, and they know how to handle cattle, and they know when to use a hot shot, when not to, and that's a big part of it. But
now that you brought that up, now we had a place out there in New Mexico, and so anyway, I stayed up there after we'd gathered took the calves off of the cows, and I stayed up there because their trucker was going to haul them back down to the house to wean them. And anyway, it was in the night, and this truck came back, and so I went out there, and the first time I ever met a truck driver that I had trouble with, and I was back there pushing the calves, and he was back there hitting them with that hot shot, and they were kicking and all. I said, if you want to use that hot shot, get up there in the front and push them up in the front. Don't try to get these back here to push them in. And so he got up there and he got them going, and boy, when they got to going, he come right back there and started to hit hot shotting them back there again. And I said, look, let's just put that hot shot away. I don't need it anymore. Of course, we was through loading them. But anyway, I tell you what, that's another thing. That hot shot could get you in trouble. And
oh yeah.
But for some reason or other, they like to use those hot shots, and what gets me is they'll get back here on the back and try to get them to push them in. They need to get up the front and get them up the front to going in, and then the back ones will follow.
Oh yeah. Usually if that trucker can get the first one going and then just kind of wait up at the gate of his trailer, you can get the rest of them to follow. Once you get one headed up there, they kind of line out, and then really the only place they'll balk is at that trailer gate. So if they can use your hot shot right there, and they don't really even have to zap them, but just to poke them enough to where they'll keep stepping up, and then everything flows good. But there's some people who just never figure that out.
That is absolutely right. And what gets me is they'll always come back to the back. And start, instead of getting them up the front to go on. Anyway, that was just a deal I thought about, you talking about truckers. And, well, I'll tell you what, and windmills, I'll tell you, we fixed those windmills. See, I don't mean to get off the cow subject, but they got to have water. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
We changed the oil in all of our windmills every 6 months. And and we did our own windmill work. We put leathers on, put new cylinders in, replaced pipe, replaced sucker rods, or whatever needs to be done. But when it comes to replacing the motor or something like that, well, we usually got somebody else. But other than that, we always did what we had to do to fix windmills. That's another part of it. And boy, I tell you, you get pretty nasty changing those, the oil in all those windmills. You better have some old clothes you don't plan on using. Cause
that's for sure.
That old dirty oil gets in and can't get it out. But anyway, that's another thing, Well, fixing windmill. But I'll tell you the worst thing there is for a boy that's pretty young that thinks he's a cowboy. I'll tell you the worst thing. You want to know what it is?
Well, let's hear it.
This is my opinion. It's when they say, Billy, you got to clean the chicken house. Oh, my word. I hated to clean the chicken house. Worse than anything, 'cause we clean it all out, and take the roost out and all the nest and everything. Well, we didn't always take all the nest out, but sometimes we did. And we'd paint that with that old creosote dip, to keep the flies and the varmints out of there. And but that's kind of an insult. I need to be a horseback instead of cleaning the chicken house. And and every minute of it, that old what was that? That rancid smell of a chicken house is kind of like I know the word for it, and I can't think of it right off. But anyway, once you've done it, you don't ever forget it. And the more you clean, the more disgusted you get till you get to the bottom of it. That's one job I was glad to get through with. I'll tell you that. I don't know why I ever thought of that.
I have become well, not me. I guess our household has become a chicken household now. The girls decided to get them some chicks, and then we got given some laying hens. And I said I don't mind building the coop. Well, I didn't have to build it. I just had to put it together and building a little pen for them to run around in. But that's the extent of my chicken farming. I kind of refuse to do much of anything else with them.
Yeah, I guess if you couldn't herd chickens with a horse, they're really not much good except for eggs.
Yeah, that's right.
This episode of the show is brought to you by Fogwell Horses. Chris Fogwell is the owner, and he contacted me after I made an announcement that I was looking for sponsors, and we agreed to do some advertising in exchange for some leather goods. Chris is a farrier by trade, and he is transitioning his career path into leatherwork, custom leatherwork, and with an emphasis on Western tack. Now he's still learning, but the product he sent me is very good quality, and I was very happy with it. He sent me some spur straps, which is what we agreed upon, but he also sent me a sheath for my pocket knife, my Moore Maker pocket knife, and he said, don't look at it real close. It was just a prototype, but I thought it was just fine, and I think he does good work, and it's only going to get better. So check him out. His name is Chris Fogwell, KRISFOG well, and you can find him on Facebook, and then his page is Fogwell Horses on Facebook and @Fogwell Horses on Instagram, all one word. And I appreciate his work, and I appreciate his support. So go check him out, Fogwell Horses.
But I was telling people that about your musical abilities and how you're probably one of the best musicians that nobody has ever heard of, in my humble opinion.
I don't know.
But you're quite the guitar player. You play the banjo, you play the fiddle, you play the piano a little bit too, don't you?
Yeah, I kind of leave that up to the others now. But that's what we had to do in the evenings down home. We didn't have any television back when I was a kid. And believe it or not, it was not until I got in the military where I got to see television, and it was black and white. In fact, when I got married, our first TV was black and white. But, I got in the military, and there wasn't a whole lot to do because I didn't run around a whole lot, and I'd go watch TV at night, especially on Saturday night. But, yeah, well, I don't know. That's what we did. We played our guitar and had a good time just to entertain ourselves.
Oh, yes, sir. And so you started playing guitar pretty early on in life, didn't you?
Yes, I started when I was 7 years old. Actually, a guy had borrowed some money from my dad, and I guess he couldn't pay him or something. He come around with this old guitar, and I just happened to be there listening. And he said, "Would you take this guitar and place of that money. And I thought, boy, I hope he does. Well, sure enough, he did. Then I couldn't hardly wait to get home, get off the school bus to get in there and play that guitar. And that guitar got me in trouble a few times because I really didn't want to go out and do what chores I was supposed to do when I was little, and I'd want to play that guitar. That's how I got started. And so, yeah, I played, well, actually, when I was young, I played with old Roger Miller quite a bit. And, of course, then he went ahead and got famous, and I didn't. He left the country. Actually, I don't even know where he went. I think he went to Los Angeles for a while, and spent a lot of time in Tennessee when he first got started. But so it's been quite a story behind my guitar playing. I've just really been blessed with the opportunity to play with some really good people. In 1978, I played with Loretta Lynn's band down in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee. And
oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I did that, and it's just been, a real fun time. I got to play with Representative McKinley up at the Denver Capitol quite a bit when he was the state representative. And
well, you guys made quite the spectacle up there doing your concerts there at the Capitol building. It always kind of made headline news there in the Denver area. People were always pretty interested by it.
Yeah, and well, we had a lot of attendees there because all of all the aides and all the senators and representatives and everybody, when we played out there, they'd usually be out there listening for, but I've enjoyed playing, for lots of places, and my family even got to go to the state fair back in the 80s, and we played down there at Kansas State Fair.
Well, that's pretty neat. Me and Rebecca were trying to get you to play our wedding, and then you had another engagement that you had already agreed to, so we didn't get it to line up. But I sure would have been fun.
I remember that. I remember you guys out at Boggsville, but I don't even remember now where we went, but we're always going somewhere, and you was talking about playing with old Roger Miller. I'd like to tell you one story real quick about him.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, he went to the Army. He was 2 years older than me. In fact, 2 years older to the day. And so he went into the Army, and about the time we were really getting to where we were enjoying playing. And when he got back, old Johnny Horton had just sung that song, North to Alaska. It come out and was real popular, and the Plainsman Quartet up here at Salina, Kansas, they backed him up. And so I guess old Roger, he thought, well, I'll just go up there and get on with Mac Sanders and the Plainsman Quartet. Well, they didn't need him, so he went on down to Tennessee and worked down there. But the one story I liked the best about that whole deal was, I don't know why, but he was up in Chicago, Illinois, doing something or other. And when he started back home, it was, I guess, dark anyway, and he got out to the edge of town, and there was some kind of a equipment dealer or somebody there, and it had a great big lighted up sign, and it said, trailers for sale or rent. And he come up with king of the road before he got back to Nashville, Tennessee on that deal. And it was trailers for sale or rent, and rooms to let for 50 cents, no phone, no pool, no pets, ain't got no cigarettes. And that's what he just come up with that out of the clear blue. And he always had songs that didn't really make sense, like talking to trains and things like that. I don't know. He was quite a guy.
Roller skating in a buffalo herd.
Whoever would have thought of something like that?
I don't know. He had a way with words, though, didn't he?
He did. I said, well, I look back at all those crazy things, and the only thing I could come up with is I wish that I could have had him to write a song about playing a trombone in a phone booth. I got to tell you this. I was over. The reason I thought of that, spent some time over in Australia, and I was actually in the airport there in Sydney, and I was going up to New South Wales, and there were some guys in there, and they had just come back from Oklahoma City to the Cowboy Hall of Fame in America, and they just flew in there, and I happened to be there, and anyway, one of them got talking to him. He wanted me to go out to his station. I got to tell you this real quick. I did go out there I went out to his cattle deal, and he had this young couple hired to work for him, and they had these long rawhides with a ball on each end, and we got talking about that, and they said that's the way they stop their cattle, so they can just put a rope on them, and they didn't have saddle horns on their saddles anyway. They had a ring down on the side that they put the rope, tied the rope to. And anyway, what they'd do is he took me out and showed me. They showed me on two different critters. They'd run those cows, and then they'd take that thing with those two balls, and they'd throw it, and that thing would start wrapping around their hind feet, and pretty soon it'd get tight, and they couldn't go. And they'd just ride up there, put a rope on their neck, and stretch them out. And it was quite a deal. I saw two of them. They did two of them that way. I said, man, I wish we'd have had a deal like that when we was doctoring them screwworms. Of course, they got those screwworms eradicated, but, well, I thought that was kind of interesting. Anyway, I still think I would have got old Roger to write a song about the trombone in the phone booth, because I heard something like that over in Australia. That's what made me think of that.
No. I was curious, was Roger, did he cowboy any at all?
No. I'll tell you what, see, he was a kind of he lived with his aunt and uncle. He had a brother, and both of them wound up with kinfolks, and yeah, I'd been down to their house, but he lived with his aunt and uncle, and no, he didn't cowboy. He worked at a cotton gin down there. I mean, well, I don't know if it's a cotton gin too, but they had a place there where you could mill castor beans. That's where I met him.
Oh, okay. I was thinking he would probably do well in the bunkhouse or something with the Cowboys, just because he had a way of you could tell he had a way of telling a story, and Cowboys are kind of famous for being able to spin a yarn a little bit. That's if you haven't noticed over the years.
I've noticed some of that, yeah.
But well, anyway, Billy, I sure appreciate you visiting with me, and I know my listeners are sure gonna like it, and we'll try to make this a kind of halfway regular deal. I miss visiting with you as much as we used to, so this will be a good way to stay in touch and keep each other informed, and then other people will like it as well.
Okay, well, keep me posted as to how I can be listening to your stories that you get gathered up on this.
I will do that. I will. I'll make sure I'll send you a link that you can click on so you can listen to it, and then if you can't figure it out, I'll find somebody that knows how to, and they'll get you set up.
Okay, well, I really appreciate it, Matt. I hope you have a good day.
Okay, well, Billy, do you want to do the sign off with me? I told you a little bit about it before.
Well, yes, but first, before we sign off, I want to tell you something, a little poem I got. It says,
okay,
may your saddle sit good and your boots never pinch. May you never have to worry about having a bad cinch. 'Cause next to having a friend you can trust, the best thing in life is a cinch that won't bust.
That's about right.
Okay.
That is about right. Well, on that note, folks, I think we're going to call it a day. I've got a few things to do before I settled in for the night, and I'm sure Billy's got some stuff to do. So, on that note, move your ass.
You're burning daylight, bud.
Thank you, Billy. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. Billy's always a fun time to visit with, whether I'm recording him or not. I love that man. He's a good old fella, and like I said before, he's been a close friend of mine for a long time, and a close friend of my family for even longer. And I really hope you enjoyed him. I know you will, but he's those last two interviews that I've done between him and my dad, those are some of the most meaningful that I'll probably ever do. Those two guys have had a big influence on my life, and I'm glad I can share their stories and their wisdom with you. So anyway, we'll have them back on a pretty regular basis, and like I said, I know you're gonna enjoy them. And with that being said, go follow the show, subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff. Especially if you're on iTunes. I know I keep saying it, but it makes a big difference when you write me a review. So if you listen on your iPhone, go ahead and do that. And if there's any option anywhere else, go ahead and do that as well. I'd greatly appreciate it. I changed around my social media so that it could be kind of a little more consistent. So for me personally, find me Matt McKinley on Facebook and at MickerMac85 on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. For the podcast, which is where most of the stuff takes place, if not, well, not all, but 99% probably of the social media activity takes place. You can find the Facebook page Burnin Daylight, and YouTube channel is also Burnin Daylight. And for everything else, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, it's Move Your Ass, at Move Your Ass, MOVEYERASS. And you can find me there. And I hope you liked it, and we'll catch you next time. So move your ass, we're burning daylight.
When I was a kid, we went to the rodeo.
Yes, sir.
And when the horses and grand entry, they call it. They brought in the flags, the Texas flag or the Colorado flag,
yes, sir,
or whatever state flag with the stars and stripes. And they would go down and they would turn. They always played this song. Let's play it, Wes.
And we all stood up every time.
Yeah, bet. Now, it's in C. Let's listen.
That's our flag.
No.